Hi everyone, we're continuing our series of beginner chess videos on my chess notebook, and the purpose of this video is to introduce you to two more rules. One is called capturing en passant and the other one is called castling. Let's begin with capturing en passant. Suppose in the position you're looking at it's Black's turn and he wants to move this pawn here forward. If he moves it one square forward, then White has the option of capturing it like that. He may try to evade capture by moving it two squares forward where it ends up right next to that white pawn. Well, if he makes use of that two square rule and moves it beyond where it could be captured, it turns out White can capture it anyway. In fact, White captures it as if it had only moved one square. So White goes diagonally forward to here and removes the black pawn from the board. When you do that, you call that capturing en passant. It's a French term. It means something like wild passing. And so the logic behind the rule is that you're capturing that pawn while it is passing you up. Now, there is one catch. You have to do it immediately if you want to do it at all. So if Black does make this move, you cannot go ahead and make a different move and then Black moves and then try it. It won't work. You cannot capture en passant unless you do it immediately. All right, let's see it again. Okay, right here, let's say White wants to move this pawn forward and it ends up right here after moving two squares. It ends up right next to that black pawn. Well, if it had only moved one square to there, Black would have been able to capture it in the normal way. Well, that's what the en passant rule is for. It tells us Black can capture it anyway, as if it had moved only one square. So Black would have to do that immediately. So the en passant rule again is if your opponent moves their pawn two squares forward, and you would have been able to capture it if it had moved one square, then you can capture it anyway, but you have to do it right away. All right, let's go ahead to another rule. We're going to talk about an important rule called castling. Castling is fun because it's the only time you get to move two chess pieces during the same move. And castling works like this. You can use your king and one of your two rooks, and they have to be on their original squares, and there's a way you can move both at the same time. But before you do it, you have to clear all the pieces that are between the king and the rook. So let's say our game starts like this. Pawn moves forward, the knight jumps out, Black's knight jumps out, and now White moves the bishop out. So White has cleared these two squares and is ready to castle. The way castling works is you move your king two squares toward the rook. So it goes to the, we've got to make a move for Black. So it goes to the right two squares toward the rook, and you drop it down, and then the rook gets placed on the opposite side of the king, right next to the king, like that. Okay, so let's see that one more time. Two squares toward the rook, drop it down and put the rook on the other side. And that's all considered one move. There are some rules about when you can do it. As I said, you have to have all the squares between the king and the rook clear, but also you cannot castle if you've ever moved your king before, or if you've ever moved your rook before that you're castling with. They have to be on their original squares, and you cannot have moved them away and then back again. Okay, let's see another example of castling. In this position, it's Black to move. Let's say Black moves their bishop out to there, and then let's say White moves their bishop out to there. Now Black is ready to castle with this king and this rook. So the king is going to move two squares toward the rook, and the rook will go to the other side of the king, like that. Now let's say White moves their queen forward one square, and then Black hops their knight out, and now White is actually ready to castle on the other side of the board with that rook. In order to castle with that rook, you need all three of the squares between the two pieces clear. The rule is the same. The king moves 2 squares toward the rook. So it's going to end up right there. And then the rook goes to the opposite side of the king, like that. All right, so you may wonder, why do you castle in chess? Well, there are a couple of reasons, and we're going to explore these in future videos. But one reason is it gets your king closer to the corner of the board where it may be safer from being checkmated. But also it gets the rook into the game so you can move it around. When the rook is in the corner, it's harder to get it into the game. When you bring it toward the center after castling, it's now easier to get it into the game. For example, you can move this queen out of the way and then move the rook forward, and it can play a role. Okay, there are a few more rules regarding castling. Let's take a look at this position. It's white to move. It looks like white is ready to castle as long as he's never moved his king or rook before. However, it's not legal to castle in this position because white is in check. The rook is checking the king. If you are currently in check, castling is not an option for getting out of check. So if you tried this on the computer, for example, it's just not going to let me do it. Can't castle while I'm in check. There's another time when you can't castle. Look at this position. Suppose white wants to castle here. Well, the squares are clear. Maybe the king has never moved, the rook has never moved. Maybe we can try castling. Do you see the problem with that? Okay, it won't let me castle here. And the reason is the king would end up on that square, which is under control by that bishop. And you're never allowed to move your king into check in chess, as we discussed in our last video. So this is not a castling specific rule. It's just a reminder that when you're done castling, your king cannot be in check. And there's one more rule regarding castling. Let's look at this last position. Now suppose white is ready to castle. He's cleared all the squares between the king and the rook. The king has never moved. The rook has never moved. The king is not in check. And if it goes 2 squares toward the rook, it's not going to end up in check either. And yet still it is illegal to castle in this position. The computer won't let me do it. And the reason is you're not even allowed to pass through a square that would put you into check. A square that's in control by an enemy piece. So that rook is pointed right at this square, and white is not allowed to pass over it. Okay, to summarize, you cannot castle while you are in check, you cannot castle into check, and you can't castle through check either. All right, that's all the rules for castling and capturing en passant. Thanks for watching the video.